The MEP. Earlier this year I started what would turn into an 8-month affair, 4PA, with an older single friend. It took until things began to turn physical before I realized that anything was amiss in our friendship. My H had full access to text and communication, and I never hung out with a P without my H present. When my AP first professed romantic feelings for me, I immediately went to H and said, "Help, what do I do? I don't want to lose my friend, but now see how so much may have led him to think things were more than friendly." My H was unconcerned, told me he knew nothing would happen between us, and left it at that. So, I tried to end the situation on my own, but eventually ended up entering into a P against anything I intended or ever felt capable. After a few weeks I confessed to H and have spent the past 3 months trying to end things definitively and maintain NC with a P. A little background. H and I married very young and held pretty religious ideals. Through the life of our marriage, H has been unable to prioritize me or our family above outside people. These include his parents, people in our church, work, etc. So, for the past 10 years, we are 28 and 30. We have had periods of regular conflict where I tell him that I need him to be on my team and he says he will and then can't seem to translate that into action. He is a pleaser and would rather disappoint me than anyone else because he knows I am legally bound to love him anyway. I have had some major bouts of depression because of these conflicts. We almost separated 3 times in 10 years but never could do it because of the religious background, and because we really do care about each other. Because we could never figure out how to work out the big issue of lack of partnership or mutual support, and I know I'm half of that equation. We threw in distractors. We had babies, we bought houses, we moved across the country and switched jobs, and at the beginning of this year we became foster parents. I suddenly found myself the mom of 4 kids under the age of 4 and a H who wasn't a partner. I was overwhelmed and sad and lonely, and it was nice to have a friend who was older and just wanted to listen to me vent or make me lunch or be sweet to me and make me feel taken care of, none of which I was able to vocalize until I got caught up in the affair and went into IC. As soon as I felt able, I confessed to my H and have been completely honest with him since then, even when there has been contact between me and AP. I am not naturally a liar and I don't want to be this person I have become through this affair. I am depressed and feel hopeless, and I am frequently full of self-loathing and identity confusion. My H and I have intentionally separated on a trial basis, found a different placement for our foster kids, and are trying to work together to shield our bio kids from all the fallout. My H has been hopeful and wanting to work things out almost since D-Day. He is gracious and forgiving and a kind man. I just can't make myself reattach to him. All the build-up disconnection before the A and the effects of the A itself have left me trying to work to see if we can rebuild a better relationship from this point forward. But I can't seem to make myself feel the things I should feel anymore. I am doing the things I think I should be doing, complete honesty, NC with a P, I see an MC every week, etc. But I still feel detached and hopeless. Does anyone have experience with this? How do you get through it? Do the feelings ever come back? Is there more I can do to help the process along? Let me play it straight. I'm not trying to blame my H for my affair, and I'm not pining for my AP. Yes, it was difficult to completely end contact at first because an affair ends up being extremely addictive. I have gone to NC and am maintaining that. My choices were my own and I take responsibility for that. There have been consequences for all of us and I do feel remorse. I apologize and legitimately ask for forgiveness for what has happened. But it would be really easy to say this affair is the cause of all the problems instead of a symptom of the existing problems. As to my husband feeling that I would just keep on living him based solely on the fact that we are married, he will even admit this. He comes from a pretty emotionless family that never put much stock in the emotional realm. So, no matter how much I express the need for connection, it just never translated for him. I cannot say I haven't disrespected my husband because I have been unfaithful, which denotes a huge lack of respect, but I am working to figure out how to change my patterns in order to change the system. You can question my sincerity or my faith or whatever you want to question, but all I really want to know if there is a way through this where we can do the work and actually reconnect. If we do the work, will the feelings follow? Comment. Usually, the first order of business when a WS cheats is to find out if the BS has the capacity to forgive and whether the WS is willing to do the heavy lifting to help them heal. It has to be about the BS, not the WS. That can take weeks or months. At whatever point that is resolved, then work can be done on the marital issues. You mentioned you have received consequences. What were they? Were you exposed to friends and family? Do you have new marital boundaries? Do you now account for your time away from him? Did he make you get STD tested? Did you write a no-contact letter to the other man? Did you have to wait for weeks for your husband to decide whether to R or D? OP responds. So, assuming continued NC with AP, does anyone have any experience with the next steps? How long is the time frame for getting out of the fog? Has anyone successfully done this without there being a weird power imbalance in the relationship after? Because staying together but being punished for the forever or feeling resentful towards my H for the things that came before the seems like a bad way to be. I want to be able to build something better, but I don't know how. So, I'm wondering if anyone had successfully done it and what they did. As far as consequences, my husband and I have separated, at my request because he really tried to sweep it under the rug right away. And I thought we should really actually work through it. I exposed myself to friends and the pastors of our church and my family because I knew I needed help and accountability. He has made very few demands. He wants us to reconcile but knows that we both need to work through what led us here if we hope to keep it from happening again. I have given him access to my phone and internet stuff, and I will literally tell him anything he wants whenever he wants. Before this, I legitimately was not dishonest with him. It was incredibly difficult to keep this secret even for a few weeks. I want to rebuild trust, but weirdly, my H barely seemed to stop trusting me at all. He is an IC as well, and I try to remind him that it's okay to get mad about it. It's okay to feel things. He just doesn't seem to want to. He wants things to be normal again. I just don't know how to do that with him because I feel anything but normal. I feel like I've lost myself completely through this. I can't beg him to be mad, but neither can I seem to make myself feel committed 100% when it feels like we would be rug sweeping everything like we have done in the past. And please don't hear this as me trying to make myself out to be the injured party. I'm not. I'm just as much to blame for the situation and entirely to blame for I just know that I had a lot of underlying issues with my marriage and I want to figure out how to give it everything I have. I am trying, but I feel very hopeless and depressed even with the trying. H and I get together most nights to work out or watch TV after kids go to bed, but even with renewed friendship, I feel no attraction, and that is just depressing. We haven't been physical since a few months before the PA started, mostly due to stress and so many little kids, and I know that it will have to get figured out if we hope to stay together. So, I need some feelings to follow, or the hope that the feelings will follow. He is a nice man, a good father, a consistent provider, not abusive, and doesn't struggle with addiction. He is maybe pretty codependent, but a lot of that stems from issues in childhood. He was homeschooled until college by very religious and mentally controlling parents, who are not bad people but have been a major source of conflict for us. For my part, I met him in college while I was struggling with my own issues of a rather emotionally unavailable, invalidating father. I wanted someone to take care of me and ended up with a very nice boy who needed more taking care of than anything. Then we had babies, so more taking care of others without getting the emotional support, validation. But my H and I are friends. We can laugh and hang out and parent our children. But when things get sad or hurtful or angry or in any way negative, he is always checked out. He is working and I see on this because it was the first thing to shock his system enough to convince him there was a problem. But this was after years of conflict and me having 3 serious breakdowns and not ever knowing how to move forward, because in the end it is easier to go along with the rug sweeping than continue to fight for change with someone who can't go there with you. So, yes, he is a nice man and a great father, and if I can do anything to put it back together short of ignoring all the issues, I want to try. I am just so afraid that I'm too checked out. That maybe I was checked out before the and just didn't see it because really, in our families and our church culture people don't split up. I want to hope that there is a way forward, but I'm worried that I have irrevocably broken my ability to want my H in all the ways I think are necessary to maintain a healthy marriage. We have tried to be intimate periodically since D-Day, sort of a gut check to see where we are both at. We get as far as kissing usually and I panic. There is some sort of wall there for me and I usually end up in tears. As to the respect piece, I have to think that no, at the moment I don't respect very much about him based on who he has been. But I respect the hard work he is doing now for himself. And I respect how gracious and forgiving he has been. And I respect that he has hope even though I can't seem to find any. He is a decent guy and I can respect him on that level. I just can't seem to respect him on the level of a partner right now. I think something to remember is that we got married very young and had so little idea what we were going to need or want 10 years down the road, and nor did we have great examples of passionate, connected upbringing in our families of origin. Add to that the message from H, his family, and our church that feelings shouldn't matter, which are echoed in the responses of religious people in this thread, and you will see the quandary. Do we keep going and act like the commitment piece is enough, or do we acknowledge that attraction and intimacy and connection are just as important? I never set out to cheat or separate from my H. Honestly, by the time I understood the situation I had helped create, we were pretty deep in it. And I never want to make those choices again. But if we're talking about a life of commitment for the sake of commitment on its own, I'm not confident I can maintain that. Which brings me back to my original question. Has anyone successfully rebuilt that connection after with passion and intimacy? How did you do it? And as far as divorcing, I am in a frame of mind to consider it, but I want to be sure there are no other reasonable options. It's no more straightforward or less painful than trying to do the work on the front end. And even though divorce is less stigmatized in general these days, it's still pretty stigmatized for us. Which, for me, is less about looking good to others and more about the concern of having no supports for either of us should we decide to part ways. First, I know that we are just strangers coming together on the internet, but please don't assume you know how I feel about my kids. They are 2 of the most important people in my world, and I work really hard to do what's best for them, which I know will sound false considering what I've done, but it's absolutely the truth. Any way you slice it. Though, kids are wonderful and add a ton of meaning, but they aren't partners. They can't help bearing the burdens of adult life. And even though both of mine were very planned, they are very stressful as newborns. I think even a solid marriage would buckle a little under the weight of a new baby or 2 or 4. I do not regret my kids, but they have served to distract us from some unfulfillment in our relationship. And they have bonded us as parents, for sure. They are what we do best in life, hands down. And I know that I have acted selfishly. Yes, my love and commitment to my H does appear to end where my needs started. I will say this, though, and he would agree, I spent years asking for what I needed very specifically. I needed a partner. I needed someone to help diffuse my frustrations with life while letting me know I was supported. I needed someone to comfort me when I was sad or get excited with me when I was excited. So, I asked, and then I begged, and then I demanded, and then I just started telling myself that he didn't care. Especially when I came to him at the first hint that my friendship with this other man had turned a corner into a dangerous place, and he remained unconcerned. It just reinforced my belief that he didn't care. And so, yes, I shocked myself and everyone I know by forming a relationship where I felt like someone cared. Our therapist describes it as a starving person stealing food just to get some sustenance. It is in no way excusing the affair, just helping us understand how we got to where we are. I have learned so much from this experience, not the least of which is that sometimes it's not that people won't, it's that they can't. I needed things that H didn't have the ability to give me. He grew up in an invalidating, unemotional family, so that is all he knew. I also know that I was not strong on my own before we married, and we both lacked maturity or experience, and so we essentially played house for years. Even as I grew more and more dissatisfied, I also lacked the tools to change. I thought if I kept clearly stating what I needed, eventually he would get it. If I threatened to leave, he would get it. If I disengaged, he would get it. He just never did until I am 50% of our unhealthy marital patterns and 100% of the affair. I can be selfish and untrustworthy, a relatively new trait that I am struggling with so hard. I can be anxious and controlling. I can be a lot of things that have contributed to our issues. I am working on myself. This thread is about what I can do, if anything, to re-engage and reconnect with my husband. I'm not trying to focus on what he needs to do, but I also don't trust myself to stay in a marriage where one or both of us feels unsupported or controlled or unloved. And I think we have both suffered these things, though it would be super easy to make the only issue. I think we could have moved past it if I had been a serial cheater who just didn't care. But that isn't us. We have been managing this for about 3 months now, and I am only just starting to move out of the self-defeating stage of just feeling like a horrible person and actually starting to work on things. Because everyone makes poor choices in their lives, not always the same ones, but poor choices, nonetheless. I am human. I am learning. And nobody is going to be served if I just roll over and die because I made the choices I made. I can look at my husband and feel love for him. I can appreciate how kind he has been, and I can make room for the changes he is making and encourage him in his process. I like to hang out with him. We have actually spent more time together since separating than we did in the years before. He meets me at the gym and we walk the track together and talk. Or we spend Sunday nights together with the kids and do family stuff. We watch old episodes of Friends and hang out. And in those moments our relationship feels almost normal. But sometimes he tries to push us into a romantic place and I panic. I hyperventilate and cry and I apologize profusely but just can't seem to move past it. I am wondering if we just took things really slowly and built up the foundation from scratch. Maybe things would just feel more naturally romantic one day. And then we could rebuild the romantic foundation. He is not unattractive at all. But our romantic life was always a little stunted, like much of the rest of our life, based on the very conservative upbringing he had and general inexperience. It wasn't something we could ever talk easily about. I began to assume after a while that I just wasn't that into it. I found out during the that is not the case at all. With emotional intimacy came a physical desire unlike anything I have ever experienced, which I know is very taboo to discuss, but it's all part of the knot I'm trying to untangle. It goes back to needing things my H can't give me, at least at this point. And maybe the uncertainty I feel about ever having the same kind of emotional intimacy or physical intimacy in my marriage, and the knowledge that I never would have known any different if I hadn't allowed it in, is a bit crushing. H, he is the friend I have known the longest. He is kind and good and I can't imagine not having him in my life. I have a professional job and would be financially okay on my own, so it isn't that. It's just that when you live with the mentality that divorce isn't an option for so many years, it's a hard shift to make. He is a good person. I am a good person. We just have formed a lot of really toxic patterns and made choices in our relationship that have wounded the other very deeply. But I see how much better our kids do when they see both of us every day. And I have difficulty thinking I will feel significantly happier celebrating holidays without him or handing off kids every 3 days. He is my family. We were practically kids when we met. We know all the things nobody else knows about each other. It's not like every day of the last 10 years was miserable. That's what made the coming to grips with our issues so difficult. We looked really good on paper and got really good at rug sweeping privately just so we could keep going when things got really bad. Now we have a chance to try something completely different, and if there's a chance to preserve our family and legitimately have a good marriage, I don't want to cut and run prematurely. As to the specifics of affair, of course feelings were involved. The first 4 months that I call emotional affair were an open friendship that freely involved H and other man. H had complete access to all communication and I never saw other man on my own. We were very good friends until feelings were expressed by other man and things escalated very quickly. Actual only lasted for about 3 weeks before I first tried to end things and told my H everything. Turns out lying really doesn't suit me. I have spent weeks trying to end things with other man completely and have been honest with H every step of the way, because one thing I have learned is that I can't live the double life. I am not blaming H for the affair. I am not even blaming him entirely for the breakdown of our marriage, because that took both of us. But there is always context. Because I specifically wrote this post to ask help with marriage recovery efforts, not help with the itself, it seemed relevant to mention the context. If I am considering divorce, it had more to do with myself than either of these men. I don't trust myself anymore. I no longer have a good sense of who I am or what I would do because I spent my whole life believing I would never do this. I am trying to gather bearings and see if I can invest in a relationship where I don't trust myself or the foundation of the relationship itself. I have been hyper-processing this situation for months, mapping out patterns and my pieces of the equation and setting goals. I've finally moved out into a place where I can start trying to take steps forward. So if it seems like I'm not going to accept a wholly negative interpretation of me at this point, it's because I won't. Staying stuck in self-loathing and defeat literally helps nobody. I don't find my character flawed. I find myself capable of making the same poor choices all of us are capable. I find myself not nearly as mature or steady as I once thought. I find a lot of things to look at about myself that make me cringe, but I'm not about to take on shame from anybody else based on the choices I have made. I have my own shame to manage without allowing strangers to shame me. As for the AP, I really won't comment on him. If I want to make a go of it, I have to get some distance from even thinking about him, much less telling him to do anything to himself or anyone else. This is not about H. He has made his position clear. He wants to change our relationship. He has never stopped loving me. As angry as he felt about A, he chooses to blame AP for much, though I try to keep him aware that I was just as much to blame. He will not allow this incident to ruin every good thing we have together. He doesn't like me telling other people about my A, because he doesn't want them to think that wholly represents who I am. He understands the complexity of our situation in a way that makes me want to fight for this man and this marriage. I just have never had the experience of wanting to do something but feeling so hopeless about it. But I am fighting for us, too. We separated so we could clearly address the issues and have some space to find ourselves again, to figure out what we want, need, and how to listen when approached by the other. And I am trying to find some hope that the feeling of being in love can be found after walking this out for a while. Our MC has asked us to sit with our own ambivalence over the life of H's apartment lease because the urge to make snap decisions is strong in both of us and has never served us very well. So, we are sitting in ambivalence and discomfort, spending time trying to build whatever connection we can while paying attention to how it feels. I know it may sound silly, but sitting with the ambivalence, not covering it up, not distracting from it, is allowing both of us to take stock in ourselves and our relationship in a way we never have. That's why I came here, because I assumed that if we sat with it, I would start seeing the feelings come back. What I am hearing from advice here and elsewhere is that it may not be something you can force, and learning to be less controlling is something I am working on. So, we wait and work and see what happens. He is living in an apartment because it was the arrangement that worked best for us. We wanted the kids to stay in the house, and since I work 3 days a week and am home 2 days a week, we have a nanny for only the 3 days I'm at work. By staying in the house allows the kids to stick to their schedule and for us not to pay for more childcare. I offered to move out, but ultimately this arrangement made the most sense for us. We had problems before the wedding, but since we dated long distance, we didn't realize our incompatibility until very near to our wedding when I moved out to where he was. I called my mother and said I wasn't sure, and she assured me that in a few years we would be much better suited for each other as we grew up and grew together. It didn't exactly work out that way, and I was too young and immature to realize that you need to love your spouse as they are, not as they may be one day. Seems pretty obvious, but it wasn't to me at the time. Comment: as long as you have loving feelings for other man and refuse to come to terms with the fact that he was a predator that has blown up your kids' family stability, there will not be much progress. Right now, your BH is numb with pain and is so fearfully wanting to rug sweep to keep the marriage, family intact that he's swallowing such a nasty situation that you put your family in. You, on the other hand, wanted to separate, but it's the betrayed who's out of the house. Is that fair? What did you hope to achieve by the separation? More distance from your husband to allow you to keep the affair going from eyes that were making you feel guilty? Or is it allowing you the space to not feel less guilty about not wanting to sleep with your husband? The poor guy has to be in so much pain knowing that another man, who was playing like he was a friend, was actually banging the mother of his kids right under his nose. Then you continue to sleep with OM for months after confessing. Wow, that is seriously messed up. He doesn't even get to emotionally reclaim your body through hysterical bonding because you now find sleeping with your husband repulsive, which is caused by you still subconsciously wanting to be loyal to OM. Your kids' family life and stability hang in the balance while you probably spend the day emotionally absent, pining away for other man. That will not change until things on the ground change. If you hope to your husband has to reclaim your body. That could only happen when he mans up enough that you find him attractive again. OP responds, I'm simply saying I'm not going to live in a fantasy world where everything was roses and sunshine and unicorns and I just went out and cheated because deep down inside I'm a horrible human being. Because what good does that do anyone? We would either walk away from our marriage and take the same toxic behaviors into a new relationship, or we would stay together and contain those toxic behaviors to the relationship we already had. I know that you think that tough love is what it takes to get through to people, but really it just communicates a complete lack of understanding of the complexity of relationships or infidelity. And to those who have implied that I'm still seeing my other man, I would direct you to the first part where I said I am in NC with him. I choose not to talk or think about him because continuing to think about him is what kept me contacting him for 3 months. And because, yeah, it hurts. The whole situation hurts. The betrayed don't have exclusive rights to hurt, though they obviously have every right to feel and express the astronomical amount of hurt that this betrayal has caused. And if it leads them to do, so be it. If not, then nothing seems to get solved by sweeping the underlying issues in the marriage if you hope to rebuild. And no, I don't think that the majority of women, though I can't speak for men, just go out and have affairs because they're lustful. I'm sure some do, but I think they may be the exception and not the rule. An honest look into my affair. You want to know how I justified it to myself? It was really simple. After we discussed the other man's professions of romantic interest in me and my husband seemed indifferent, a thought took root in my heart and mind that made it incredibly easy. He doesn't care. I honestly believed that he would neither be surprised or that upset. Obviously, that's idiotic and I can see it for what it is now, but it's not without merit in the overall discussion of how to move forward. No marriage can last when one or both of you feels like the other one doesn't care. And that's not to say that he legitimately didn't care. This is not about what he did or didn't do that caused my affair. What caused my affair was the ability to justify it and years of loneliness that had built up and my lack of creative problem-solving skills to deal with it. I'm squarely at fault for not just saying, okay, man, I'm really deep into the process of starting an affair, so before that happened, let's take a good hard look at our relationship. I take full responsibility for that. As to what I said about my H to other man, I hope I haven't given the impression that I think my H is an idiot or in some way a buffoon who is worthy of ridicule. He is kind and gracious and probably the nicest man on the planet. I said the same things I have said on this post to the other man. I never talked about our physical life, so, lucky you, you've gotten even more than he did. When other man commented on how it could be that H had no idea that something was happening, I commented that that fact probably said more about me than it did about him. It's not like I set out to cheat because I hate my H. I was overwhelmed and felt trapped in a situation that had been going on for years and somebody offered me an out. So, I took it. Do I regret it now? Of course, I do. And not because I got caught. I didn't get caught. I confessed after I had tried to end things. But at the time, no matter how much half of mine knew that what I was doing was wrong, of course it was, I couldn't let go of feeling seen by someone else, like feeling like someone cared. And I justified it because after years of disconnection I really believed that my H didn't care. The husband responds, I see a woman who is remorseful, that is deeply and keenly aware of the pain and relational havoc the A has caused, for both of us. She's never once denied responsibility of the A in any of her posts. She's so aware of the impacts. In fact, I'd say that any further comments about how ashamed she should feel about her actions, or anything along those lines, are absolutely unnecessary, unhelpful, and unwelcome. I see a woman who desperately wants to know if someone can offer any wisdom, any hope of reconciliation, because she still cares deeply for her husband and is trying to work on things. All the while, though, she's wrestling with the fear that even a new relationship with her husband will continue to lack the emotional connection that it did essentially for the entire course of the marriage. This cannot be reduced to a simple you had an A, you screwed up, you need to divorce him or spend forever begging your H for forgiveness. This situation goes so much deeper than that, and ignoring that fact, or even passing judgments without caring to know more of the situation, ends up erasing any good intentions one might have had and just ends up being hurtful. I stand by the things she said. It does not mean she is at her core a horrible person who threw away a perfect marriage. She doesn't need tough love from complete strangers who don't know her. She is simply asking if anyone has had experience working through reconciliation when the feelings aren't there. She is looking for hope. I just regret that she had to post those things for herself. All I can say is I stand with her. OP responds, believe it or not, I've been extremely honest here. Do I harbor resentment for my husband as to the state of our marriage? Do I get angry and act like a huge wench sometimes? Of course. Do I blame him for my A? No, I don't. As to the A itself, it lasted for a month and then there were 3 months of further communication, all of which was relayed to my H in real time because, contrary to popular belief, I was trying to end it and finding myself surprisingly weak-willed, selfish, totally aggressive. No, that seems to imply that I was trying to get back at my husband out of spite or something. I just wanted to feel taken care of for a while. Again, selfishness. My husband has weighed in on this thread now, and whether he wants to weigh in on anything else about our situation is up to him. Though I think he's extremely brave for saying anything given how judgmental people on this post have been about him as well as me. He's not weak or crying into his coffee every morning. Like me, he's trying to figure out how to navigate the bomb site that used to be our marriage. He's working on himself and figuring out what he wants. And you know what? He's continuing to be the gracious, kind-hearted man he always was. He can acknowledge his stuff. I can acknowledge my stuff. But it doesn't take away the 8 years of marriage and 2 years of dating that came before it. And no amount of my crying into my coffee every morning is going to do it, either. He would see right through it, anyway. I can tell you, though, that I have never felt more broken than when I first confessed to my husband and saw the devastation that followed for him. It was really the first time that it hit me in a meaningful way that he truly did care. Again, it may have been idiotic to think that way about it, but that's where we were at. I think being able to fully see the patterns and the choices made led us to where we are. I agree that my husband trusted me implicitly. We have both learned through therapy that at the point in which we chose to ignore the professed feelings of other man, fully believing that things could carry on and nothing would happen, trust turned into denial on both of our parts. Few months later, final update. I am only separated from my husband by mutual decision, and there's a hard road toward possible divorce and co-parenting. My H and I fight more now than we ever have before, and it has been really good for us. But when communication breaks down to anger and disrespect on either side, we take a break for a few days and just communicate about the kids, something we can usually agree on and connect over. But don't get sucked into the drama. Emotions are high all around and it won't help anyone to stay in a toxic cycle. I am the one trying to encourage my H to express some hurt, to differentiate himself enough to understand that this affair isn't something that can be forgotten because it's more comfortable to sweep it away and get back to the stability of what we had, which is gone now, and probably for the best. Our issue is not one of extortion or bad-mouthing, it's one of still caring too much about each other. I still want to take care of him, which he also wants, but I also want a relationship that reciprocates that meaningfully, which he admits he doesn't know how to do yet. So for us, it's a big swing the other way. We can't let go, but we haven't learned how to be married healthfully. At any rate, I think it's a shame to lose the good stuff because, for us at least, the good stuff was really good. My comment: you got sold a bill of goods by your lover boy, and now you want your husband to cash a check that the OM wrote. The grass is not always greener on the other side. Remember that, guys.